Hey, aloha kako. Welcome to Mo'olelo Monday here on Del Aragon. And this is going to be our second part in our three-part series of Spooky Kine Investigations, my step into paranormal investigations. Um, the first video, I spoke mostly about the introduction of becoming a member into the group. This video, I'd like to concentrate more on what we did and what made me so proud of being in Spooky Kine Investigations, first of all. It helped a lot that it was run by Wayne Takabayashi, the boss, the coordinator, the founder of Spooky Kine. He's really good man. Very nice guy. A lot of fun. Very very compassionate, and very intrigued by the world of the supernatural. From what I understood, he had strange things happen to him in his life, in the paranormal realm, but it was, I guess it was enough to kind of make him intrigued. Like, he wasn't a person who constantly experienced like paranormal activity, not like something like, say, me or John would experience from baby kid times. You know what I mean? From Hanabata days. This is something that he had experienced. One, I can't exactly remember what the story was, and if you guys talk to him, you can ask him what his experience was, but it had an effect on him, and because of that, he took interest in the paranormal because it was kind of confusing. It kind of like messed with how things are supposed to be in this world. Well, as what it's supposed to be, because paranormal is like something that's not normal, and from the things that we experience on a daily. When you experience something that's paranormal, it kind of takes you out of like, what is this, like, what is this world? It makes you step into a deeper part of the ocean, yeah. And you find a whole bunch of different aspects of what life has and can offer, and questions pop up. It's like, well, what does this mean? What is that? What happened? Like, why did it happen to me? Or how could I get that to happen again? Like, how could I communicate with it again? Or how, just a whole bunch of, scientific, logical questions come up, and you kind of want to know what it is. And so when he created his team, he had, himself, who, well, why did he create it in the first place? And from what I know, he really took to that, to a movie from back in the 80s called Ghostbusters, and that was something that kind of like, talked about the paranormal, but it's kind of like in a funny haha kind of way, right? It's like a comedy, had cool effects, and interesting story that talks about something that you don't normally experience, which is why it's paranormal, right? But for me, my experiences into the paranormal was more like my normal, because I would be having more things happen to me than usual, than like typical people who are just like, oh wow, what was that? They see something strange floating above a building, or they see something swimming right below the surface of the water. They have these small stories that are profound to them, and they'll repeat that same story over and over again to a group of people that are willing to listen. And there's lots of people who are willing to listen, but for me, I have a whole like, I have a plethora of stories that are rattling around in my head, which is why I do these after school storytellings here at my work. The kids enjoy it. The kids love it. So they come to my class. We turn the lights off, and then I just start sharing, and that'll pick the brain of one of the students, and it'll make them remember something that they had experienced one time, and then they'll share, and it's kind of like we are going around inside this talk story. It's really really nice. It's really nice to hear the stories they have and being able to talk to them about not having to worry about those kinds of things. Just to be strong and then it can't bother you. Really, it can't unless you allow it to. So yeah. Anyway, getting into the Spooky Kine Investigations, Wayne made it a point to do, I guess, kind of like a professional development. Like he was always interested in ways for us to learn and stuff like that. And he kind of, I think he believed in me. Um, I think his belief in me was a little flawed, to be honest. So first of all, I've had, like I talked about in the last part, I had this feeling of I was an imposter, imposter syndrome, and I didn't feel like I belonged in the space of a cultural advisor. I didn't think I had enough knowledge on the whole, you know, the whole cultural thing. I mean, maybe I may know X, Y, and Z, but I'm pretty sure there are people out there that knows the whole alphabet. But for what I was at the time, I guess it worked until he found somebody better or whatever. And I kind of figured it was that kind of position. Someone else will come along and fill my shoes, and I'll be able to kind of go back into the background where I'm most comfortable as introvert. But yeah, so we did a lot of things like professional development, and I remember actually going to the library with him one time, and man, that was like to a demon how church is, right? I'm walking into the library, which I hadn't been in since the 80s, and I'm like, kind of like, back, stay back, It's like this wealth of knowledge from all these books were just like burning me in the face, and I'm not one for reading, unless it's like instructions on how to do something, or if it's a manual and stuff like that. I don't mind reading those things because I'm learning about how to use, some kind of tool and whatnot. But for just in the realm of enjoying and finding entertainment in literature, that was never my thing. I was always about hearing stories, watching stories happen, play out movies, television, things like that, video games. Those are the kinds of experiences that I liked when it came to storytelling, which is really funny that I'm into creating stories now, literature for people to read. So well, ironic, I don't know, but basically we went into the library to go do some research, and I have no idea what I'm supposed to be doing. He would not be able to leave me in a room alone to find anything, because I would not be able to. I mean, ever since I was in school, that was always something that I always had the hardest time doing. It was always overwhelming to me. I always found those kinds of things just tedious and I want to say frustrating, not boring, but I want to say frustrating. Like I didn't know how to go about finding information, and then there was this thing in the back of my head too that made me think, like, well, who wrote these books? That was another thing, right? The pride. So, who wrote these books, and why do they say they have, the end of all knowledge, that being what it is? Because growing up, we were forced to read these, texts and whatnot of the Hawaiian people during Hawaiian studies, and they had a lot of information in there, very interesting information, which I learned a lot of it was false. A lot of it was extremely false because it had been, with no other word to put it, whitewashed. It had been changed from the perspective of the Hawaiian people themselves. Instead of them actually creating these texts, it was created by the people that could make texts, which were the Caucasian people. And so that was another thing that was an issue for me when it came to reading literature in the form of entertainment, is there was nothing really that I could grasp. I mean, I think even when we read stories, about civil rights, and when we learned about certain people, I mean, no offense to other people of color, but it didn't resonate with me at all. Like, I didn't understand their plight. I didn't understand their difficulties in life. Things are so different in Hawaii because we actually got along with everybody. And no matter what you say about Kill Holiday or whatever we had in schools and stuff like that about, taking out your aggressions on, foreigners on a one particular day a year, from school time. I mean, like, I think that's even something created by people that weren't even from here, Kill Holiday. But yeah, so long story short, the information that was available in the library just wasn't anything that interested me. I didn't find anything in there. It was just more headache trying to sift through what I wanted to try and find and read and whatnot. And it didn't help that the teachers that I had were pretty, they got pretty hard on, they were pretty hard on me, because I didn't come from your typical family. I mean, the families that I was surrounded by were people from Kailua, and from where I'm from, the countryside, it's less about academics and more about family, more about doing what's right and doing what you're told. Coming to a place, making sure you leave it better than you came, right? Or making sure that a person feels better than when you came. So it's about leaving a good mark, positive mark, and it's not about making money. It's not about making a name for yourself. It's about being a good person because, for us Hawaiian people living out in the middle of the Pacific Ocean for thousands of years, we had to adjust and adapt to each other so that there was peace. Because there's only so far you can go. I tell the kids in class, I said, right, you act up with somebody in the mainland, you'll never see them again. They'll just do something mean to you and boom, they're gone. You'll never find them. Live in some other state, live in some other town, you'll never see them again. In Hawaii, it's a different story. Because if you would act up with somebody, A, it's a small island, so you're going to see them again eventually. And B, everybody's related. Like, you're going to mess with somebody, you're going to mess with somebody's cousin or seriously, like an uncle or auntie. Because there were nieces and nephews that were, like, older than uncles and aunties from when I was going to school. So it's kind of trippy. But yeah, you mess with somebody, you mess with the whole family, man, and it's rough. It's rough. I feel bad for the people that come down here and have no respect, not just for the Kanaka Maoli and even other people that come and move to Hawaii, but just for the Aina, just for the land, That's something else that kind of trips me out too, is like people from the mainland come down, they leave their pilikia, they leave their opala, which is their problems and rubbish, all over the place, man. I mean, I'm not saying that we locals and natives don't do the same thing. I mean, we get some low people that also leave rubbish and junk all over, and they're too lazy and too moloa to clean up their own mess. But I mean, that's another story. I mean, see, that's even more despicable to me. And when you have these foreigners that come down and do what they do because that's how they're raised, it's kind of hard to be mad at them. It's kind of hard to be upset with them, and it's you can give them reminders. Hey, that's not the best thing to do. Stop. But what's really bad is when you have a person who was raised in Hawaii and who knows better, and should not be doing these kind of things. That when they do it, that's to me is really, really sad. That's that's worse. To me, that's worse. But anyway, I'm getting off track about what it was that I was trying to say about Spooky Kine. So yeah, he would take me into these libraries to go and do some research, and I could not. I felt so bad. Because here's this grown man standing inside this library, supposedly helping to look up information, microfiche, and text and stuff like that. Try to find, anything that'll help with our investigations. And I think that was the one and only time he took me to the library to actually do research. Because man, I was at a complete loss. I was not used to that kind of that environment. That environment just was not my cup of tea. It's not where I thrived, and it's not where I felt comfortable. And of course, I was unable to help him because it was out of my capacity, my depth there. So I felt pretty bad about that, but that was one aspect to being a part of this group that kind of helped me grow. You know, I mean, like every part of this group helped me grow, from our interactions with people to the things that we would do. It would help me grow as a person, and that kind of made me. I opened my eyes, and it says, "Hey, you know, Gabe, you really should think about, you know, things like this, and at least try to learn something from somewhere." Yeah, if your culture is a type that's oral, like the Hawaiian people, then maybe, you know, maybe be one of those people who kind of picks things up more when there's a story being told or when it's time to tell a story. And so, yeah, so some of the things that, other things that we would do in our group, of course, were investigations, but we'd also do talks, and we would do tours. So the tours, actually, we were invited mostly, and I did kind of touch briefly about going on tours with Hawaiian Hauntings, with Joe Punohu and the rest of the group. Not to say that it's Joe Punohu's group, okay? I just want to make that clear. I'm sorry if I don't want to offend anybody else, but basically going out with these other groups, with Obake, with Opaka, with, just by ourselves even. Yeah, we would go out on top these small, even with the UH system, we'd go out with the teachers and stuff like that, just to do community service, just to learn about the Aina, learn about the area, learn about what the Hawaiians would do in those areas. And it was a lot. It was a lot of growth. And again, I'm so eternally grateful to Wayne for inviting me to become part of this group and getting to learn all this stuff. That stuff I'll never forget. I'll never forget those moments where I actually got to learn about, you know, the history of Hawaii, the correct history, what really happened, you know. So I knew things were fishy about the texts from when we were growing up. You know, it didn't really make any sense to me. How could this be that, and how could that be this? And come to find out that sure, it's not true. None of that stuff from the text was true. And it's just a quick thing just to derail this conversation. So my girls went to St. John Vianney, and during their fourth grades, and they of course learned in Hawaii. We learned some about our island during that school year. So fourth grade is dedicated to Hawaiian culture, and they had this textbook, and she was reading it one day. She needed my older daughter needed help with her Hawaiian studies, and she was reading it to me, and I was just like, "What the heck are you reading?" So I look at the book. I says, "When was this book published?" I think it was published back in the 70s. And I was like, holy smokes, man, why are you guys reading text from all the way back then? At least that's what I think it was. It was originally printed in the 1970s. And I was like, bro, this stuff is so outdated. You know what I mean? I don't understand how any of these people can believe any of this stuff in this book is true. So, I mean, like, some stuff, okay, but I'm like, no. I was like, this stuff is outdated. It should not be taught. And it comes back to the whole stereotype, right? Because it's a private school. Of course, there aren't going to be very many Hawaiian people in private school, unless they're of course related to the staff. Yeah, and it makes it cheaper or even free to go to schools that are private if you have a parent that works there or somebody. But yeah, you can see most of the children that were going there. There were some, but I mean, like, when I heard her, and I don't know if other parents had done the readings with their kids when they're in fourth grade, but that stuff is off. They need brand new textbooks for real. But anyway, yeah, that was a tangent. But yeah, so that's one thing that I learned from Spooky Kine Investigations too, is these field trips and stuff that we would take. So that's something that we do traditionally with our girls. Me and Kiara, we will take our two babies and we'll go traveling to all the different islands. The only two islands we have not hit so far are Ko'olave and Molokai. And one of the reasons Molokai is because it's too expensive to get there. We can't get there unless it's like $1,000 a person. So I was like, wow, we live right next to that island. How come we can't get to Molokai for cheaper? But yeah, it's too expensive. But one day we can get there. And then of course Ko'olave, because in our history, Ko'olave was used as a place for bombing for the United States government. And the United States is still doing stuff like that today, where they're bombing islands that are right off of places that people live. I mean, like, doing all this kind of stuff, even knowing that all this radiation and unexploded ordnance that are lying all over the ground is going to cause hassles later on. I mean, it's just, we have so much opala, man. It's so filthy. But anyway, I don't want to get into that whole thing because that's a whole different can of worms, you know. But basically, we'll take our girls onto all these different excursions. They call them huaka'i, and we'll stop off at religious sites. Those are the ones that I really like going to the heiau and the places of importance. We go to museums, we check it out, you know. Yeah, so I don't want to list all of them because there's so many places that we've been, not just art museums, but like the tsunami museum in Hilo and stuff like that. So a lot of learning and whatnot. It's really, really cool, and it's really something that came because being involved with this group, it opened my eyes. It's like there's so much information out there, and now we can do it with our kids, learn together, right? So yeah, good stuff. But let's see. Yeah, so I wanted to get into some of the fun and interesting things that we came across during, well, I came across during our, what's that called, my growth in Spooky Kine Investigations. So besides the professional developing and the travels, the excursions to different places to learn about Vahipana and places of interest and learn about things from our real history, we would also share. We would share the things that we learned with others through talks. And one of the things that we were doing kind of annually was this thing called Spooky Lao, and it's a play on words where it's like the Hooky Lao. You get that old song about pulling the fish from the ocean, yeah, the hooky lao, so they called it Spooky Lao, which I thought was cute. But yeah, so we'd get together with other like-minded individuals, and we'd we'd talk about our experiences in the paranormal. We'd share what we would do in our groups, and yeah, it'd be fun. And then of course there were the investigations, and the investigations will always be something that has been such a blessing upon me personally because of the growth I was able to do on investigations. So yeah, so we'll get into each one. So the first thing I want to talk about were actually going on tours. And so with each one of these little bullet points, I'd like to share a story. So this is story time. Yeah, so one of the first places that we went to was Kaniakapupu. And Kaniakapupu, which is the place of the singing shells, is the old summer palace of King Kamehameha III. And so the building, unfortunately, it's in ruin. You know, the walls have fallen, the ceiling is gone, and it's just this single building sitting in the middle of a forested area up on a hill, and it's just surrounded by all these, like, I guess they're cinnamon trees, but they're huge trees. And then there's this canopies go around in a circle, so it kind of lets in some light from the very, very top. And while we were on this excursion with Lynette Cruz, one of the teachers, one of the professors at UH, University of Hawaii, she told us a story, and I don't really want to share that story with you guys because that's her own personal story. If you see Lynette, you can ask her about it, but basically it comes down to the fact that she was out there one day with her husband, and she experienced something paranormal, but in a good way. And what I'm realizing nowadays too is a lot of the paranormal experiences that I had that I originally thought were either frightening or odd ended up kind of being a good thing. It seems like something that kind of just watching over me. I've been noticing that they've been kind of like positive experiences in my life, even though they were frightening. I don't know. So anyway, you'll see. But anyway, this particular experience, I think it was the first time that Wayne and I had experienced something together, because I had no idea at the time, because we didn't really talk about it, but he didn't really have any any personal experiences other than whichever one was the one that pushed him into paranormal investigation. I'm sorry, my voice is my throat's getting itchy. So he finds out that there's this waterfall, located behind Kaniakapupu if you go down the trail and make your way around. So what happened was we went to go and check out the place. The first time I went with Wayne and the UH professor, we were doing kind of like a community service where we were cleaning up, pulling weeds and stuff like that around the Kaniakapupu, which was really cool. But I wanted to show my family the place because it was so serene. Being up there was so serene. It was so peaceful. And so when we went up there, Wayne brought Courtney, our writer, and I came with Kiara, and we brought our baby girl, Catalina. And while we were there, we're kind of looking at the place, and Wayne mentioned that he's like, "Oh, there's supposed to be like that waterfall thing nearby," and so he and I decided that we're gonna break off from the main group. Oh, that's right. Yeah, I believe Matt was there too. Yeah, I believe Matt came too. And we had these real dinky, what's it called, two-way radios, and I had brought them because I thought perhaps I think that was it. I think that was the time we brought these the two-way radios, but I thought we could use them to communicate. Oh, you know what? No, that was a different story. I'm sorry. I take it back. That was a different time we brought our two-way radios. No, this particular time, we were traveling down the walkway or the path trying to find this waterfall. And when we found it, we were going to come back and grab, the ohana and go check it out. But we basically were going up and down all these hills and all that stuff. And we get to the bottom of this bamboo covered hill, and kind of looked a little bit sketchy. Like we were getting kind of close to like valley and stuff like that. So we didn't want to slide and eat it down the mountain. So we decided that, maybe it'd be safer to go back. And this is the part that's funny. As we're making our way back, I'm following Wayne back the same way we came. And I'm just kind of looking at the ground, kind of walking with my backpack, and he's, traveling in front. So I'm kind of looking at his shoes and his calves. And I hear what sounds like a woman. And it was just he and I. Me and him, going up this hill. At the base of the hill, I hear this woman call out his name. It's just kind of like a, Wayne. I was like, what? So I start looking around. He's not phased. He's like making his way up the hill, and I'm stopped there and I'm looking around trying to find where this person is. And so he kind of turns around and he looks at me. "You all right?" And I says, "You didn't hear that?" And he says, "Hear what?" I said, "Somebody just called you." And he's like, "Huh?" So I'm like, "Yeah, somebody just called out for you." And he's like, So we just kind of stayed there for a short while. All right, let's go up. So we start making our way up. Halfway up this hill, I hear the woman call out Wayne's name again. But this time it was more of a, "Wayne!" Like this thing is really trying to get his attention, but only I can hear it. And so I'm like, "Wayne." So he stops. He stops. He turns around, looks at me below, down the hill. He's looking at me, and I'm like, "Did you hear it? Did you hear it again? Did you hear it that time? Because it called you again." And he says, "Why? What did it sound like?" And I said, "It's kind of like it's calling out to you. It's like, Wayne. It's kind of trying to get your attention." And then so he's like, "No, I didn't hear it." And then all of a sudden, out of nowhere, this woman just she starts laughing. And this stuff is swirling around the top of our heads, well, at least the top of my head, like wind, just going through the bushes above us, the treetops above us. And you're just hearing this laugh of this woman. And I looked at Wayne, and his eyes were big, and he was like staring up, and I see them slowly turning kind of a reddish color. And I'm like, "Did you hear it that time?" And he goes, And so, he was being logical about it. And he says, "Oh, maybe some of the gang back at the Kaniakapupu is, and they're kind of talking, and we're hearing it traveling over the air, over the wind and stuff." I was like, "Oh, okay, all right." But I thought it was kind of weird that, this thing would call out his name in a very provocative way. And the last one, when she giggles, tries to get his attention by laughing, he finally hears it. But yeah, it's pretty trippy. So that was one of the places that we go quite often to do, like, not necessarily investigations, but we would visit quite often to that area because it was just so powerful, so peaceful, so out of the way. But these kinds of places, we kind of try to keep them on the down low, and it's not us trying to gatekeep and trying to keep other people out of the area, but basically that's what it is. We're trying to keep people out of the area, and the reason why we want to do that is because there's so many people with bad intentions who just want to go to these places and just mess with the whatever's left. They want to push things over. They want to carve their name into the side of whatever structures that are there, trees, rocks, whatever. And it's kind of a form of protection, and this is the kind of thing that is prevalent in Hawaiian legends, is people trying to protect other, and not even people, like stories of the spirits trying to protect each other from man, because they understand that man is quite destructive, and they have a very childish, immature attitude towards things. They're like, well, this thing has been standing for thousands of years. I want to be the one that brings it down. They just take it as a personal challenge to just mess something up that is just the staple or just the strength of an area. They don't take no qualms with it, which is sad. So that's kind of something. And sure enough, as soon as it became more popular, when more people started taking tours there and more people started becoming aware of Kaneakapupu, then unfortunately people actually started going there. They started defacing the area. So unfortunate. They started carving into the walls and stuff like that, which is really uncool. People don't know how to handle themselves. But anyway, so that was our story going up to Kaneakapupu. The second story I wanted to talk about when we were doing like a tour is we actually went into Manoa. Manoa, down by down in the valley. This place called Kamananui Valley, and we had originally done a field trip over there to check out the Luahine stone. And the Luahine stone is actually a petroglyph rock, an ancient rock covered in ki'ipohaku, which are petroglyphs. And so we walked all the way, and technically you can walk all the way through the whole valley and get to Kaneohe from Manoa, which is really neat. And so we had traveled through there. We looked at the rock and we thought it was very, very cool. So a group, foreigners, I believe they're foreign, but they knew our group and they wanted to go check it out. They wanted to go look at the Luahine stone, which I thought was like, oh, okay, cool, Oh, you know what? Maybe I shouldn't tell this story. I want to tell a different story. The time that we went back at night to go and investigate the Luahine stone. So after our tour, we got comfortable with going in and whatnot. So one night we actually traveled in there with all of our equipment. We're carrying all our gear. We go in for how long it is for a hike to get into that Luahine stone, and we set up shop. We do some pictures. We asked some questions. And really nothing. It was peaceful, it was serene, and there wasn't people around, so it was like, it was really nice. But the funny thing is, when we were packing up to leave, it was Wayne, Courtney, Matt, and I, me, at the Luahine stone, and it was like super dark. It was like super duper dark, and we're like, okay, maybe we should make our way back to the cars, to go home. And it was funny because we packed up all our gear, we started making our way out, and as soon as we got past one of the bridges, because they have all these bridges that go through the valley, right, to keep, in case there's like flash flood and rain and stuff, the water can still travel through. So it kind of has these bridges and stuff like that go, and then the pathway that kind of goes up and down, so it allows the water to flow freely through the valley. And it was funny because as we're making our way past one of the bridges, I hear in the mountaintops, like echoing inside the valley, this guy just goes, "Rah!" a very strong scream. And I'm like, I look back at the group and I look up at the mountains and I'm like, "Whoa, who the hell is yelling out here?" Right? Because it wasn't us, but they were like, "Oh, there's a lot of hunters that come out this way." So I'm like, "Oh, okay, might be a hunter." I don't see any flashlights or anything like that. I think we're the only ones that had any kind of flashlights. But that scream was so bizarre to me. It was so out of place. Like, and there was nothing that followed it. There was nothing like, "Oh, help me," or anything like to say, "Oh, good job," to the dog or something for spotting a pig, or even another scream to scare the pig away, because there's a lot of, I guess, pig hunters and stuff that go up there, boar hunters. But there was just that one singular scream, "Oh!" in the wilderness, in the pitch of night. And so I was like, "Oh, that's kind of weird." So we're making our way out, and I think we're halfway there. We're halfway to the parking area, and we come across this small area that has a little walk, like a little roundabout, but where there's trees growing out of the middle, and you can, kind of like this path breaks off into like kind of like a roundabout. And under there, I remember when we walked in the first time when we did our tour, it was like a little like hamlet for elves. It kind of looked like a fairy town, because it was very very magical feeling. It was kind of cute. I was like, "Oh yeah, this is probably like where the Smurfs live." You know what I mean? Because I don't know if you guys know what the Smurfs is. It's an old cartoon from back when I was growing up, but it kind of looked like a little fairyland, and it was really magic. Like, I could feel energy from that area. So we get back to that spot, and it's complete black. You can't see anything. But I remember it was at that point when we were walking towards that area, I mentioned, and I says, "You know what? Ghosts, whatever. These things that are odd, whatever. Just please don't make a pig jump out of these bushes and poke me in the butt. That's the last thing I want, is for my wife to find out that I was on a trail and I got stabbed in the ass by a pig's tusk." And so it garnered a few laughs, but the laughs were cut short as soon as there was this pig just squeals super loud right to the right side of us, and like my heart started racing. Everybody just grabbed their stuff even tighter, and they all started moving real quick. They all started walking real quick down the path, and we're like basically like speed walking, trying to get out of the valley, because this pig just came out of nowhere. It's like, I don't want to get poked in the butt, you know what I mean? And so we're just like booking it down the trail, and we went a distance, and we decided, oh, okay, because there was no, like, we must have been close, like, that was the thought. We're close to a pig's nest, like the little burrow or something like that, like a mama pig was trying to protect her babies, and we just so happened to start making noise, talking about the fairyland, the glade, or whatever it is. We started talking about it, well, I started talking about it, and maybe the noise disturbed the family, and the pig got upset and squealed. So once we got a certain distance and we kind of slowed down, just catching our breath, because we're holding all our stuff and whatnot, and so we're catching our breath, and it's like, holy smokes, that was a close one, no? And there was nothing following us. Like, it was all either gravel trail or bushes, like ferns and bushes and trees beside us. So we didn't hear anything following us, no footsteps, nothing. So we felt like we were in the clear. And as we're like, whoo, and we all started kind of giggling again, because it was like, oh, that was a close one. We don't want Gabe getting stabbed in the ass by a pig's tusk. And it happened again. It went off again to the right side of the path. The thing went and squealed exactly the same way, which made us book again. We went all the way till we got out of the valley. And to this day, I find it so strange, so coincidental that the two places that we were kind of slowing down and giggling, there was the same sounding pig, and then that man yelling before that. It really brought me back to thinking about Kamapua'a, and Kamapua'a is a kupua who can change from shapeshifter, that can change from man to a boar and to other things. He can change it to multiple things. He's a kinolau, which means that he can change his shapes. But yeah, so that was a really cool tour that we went on, and a really cool follow-up to doing these places as an investigation, but yeah, it was. These are the kinds of things that we enjoyed going, especially after we were finished with our investigation stuff. We used to go stop by like Zippy's or whatever place was open at the time, so we could sit down, have a small snack, and talk about what we experienced and what's the next steps. You know, what are we gonna do next? Analyze who's gonna analyze what are we gonna do? So those are really, those times are really memorable. Like I really enjoyed those moments where we got to do those kinds of bonding and whatnot. But yeah. So our tours, talks, we, like I was telling you, we would get into the spooky lao, so like the hooky lao, right? And so that would be during Halloween. And of course, for me, Halloween would always be a time where constant activity. Like at my house, it would be like stuff happening, things moving, shadows, voices, all kinds of weird stuff flying around our house. So Halloween was always one of those moments where, you know, we couldn't really avoid paranormal activity at our place. And so we did these kind of spooky laos. And the first spooky lao that we did, we were at the mission houses. And I guess it was kind of like a fundraiser for the... I didn't know 100% exactly what it entailed. All I knew was I had to be there. I had to share my information, my story. I had to, what's that called? Take a group of people on a tour around the houses. So we kind of ended up doing that for the night. Just... No, actually, you know what? I take it back. That was our second spooky lao. Our second spooky lao was at the mission houses. Our first spooky lao was at the Hawaii State Library. Yeah, that one was more like a panel, like when you go to Comic-Con or something like that, and you got a group of people on top of a thing, a talk story, and, you know, we're all sharing with everybody that's inside the room. Well, this one was more, it was bigger, it was outdoors, and we actually got to have the people that came to the spooky lao go on tours, which I thought was pretty cool. So yeah, I mean, going through the mission houses, I mean, those things are haunted. Those things are haunted, like big time. And so I remember going inside. I had a pretty bad dad joke that I would, you know, kind of make fun of the architecture, because when you walk into the house, you know, it's pretty. The ceiling is pretty, you know, close to your head. And so I tell the people when I walk in, well, as you can see, the architecture is was built that was built back in the 1800s. It was created by a father and son duo, which was two Chinese men, Sealing Lo and Building Lo. You know, and you know, some people got it, other people are like, huh? And they like, or other people thought I was being for real, but I was like, no, it's just a joke. It's because the building was short, kind of low, so building low. Anyway, so it was fun going into those homes because we were having activity happen in those groups that were coming around. One time we stood inside the room where they had the model of the house sitting in the middle of the room. We all did a ring, and we're asking questions, and we were saying, hey, can you make it knock, or can you make a sound? And it was funny because making a sound, making a knock, you hear these booted feet walking, these sounds walking across the ceiling, and no one was allowed upstairs. The upstairs was blocked off. You couldn't go up there. And you could hear boots hitting the ceiling, just tuk, 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 walking across. And it walked across the entire room and stopped. And this one girl, I believe her name was Lehua or something, she goes, Kalamai, is anybody breathing in my ear right now? And so it was kind of funny because she was freaking out because she could feel somebody's breath hitting her in the face, and we were all kind of like in this circle, but everybody was looking at her and it's like, there's nobody around you, you know. So she was just feeling this experience of her own inside that building. But yeah, mission houses, crazy energy. Right across the street though is Kawaiahao Church. And there is a small cemetery located behind the church, so it's not surprising that there's activity there. You know, a lot of places that have bodies, that have remains, are going to be haunted regardless of where you are. Yeah, so just like that movie Poltergeist, where the house is built over Indian burial grounds. Same thing. Our entire island, basically any place that was soft enough to inter a body, that's where the Hawaiians buried them. So we have a lot of stories about our businesses and whatnot having paranormal activity because they're built on graveyards. So can't avoid it. It's just a typical thing unless you want to dig down and find a new place for those bodies. You're just kind of stuck with those moments of activity inside your your building, your establishment. So yeah, so that was interesting. The first one over there, and when we did our third spooky law, we went to Liliha, and this is the one that I found really interesting because we were at the Liliha State Library, and we had given this small talk in this room that was off to the side. As soon as you enter into the building, you can go. There's a small lobby to the right. There's this viewing room, and then straight ahead, if you go, you enter into the library. And so the viewing room is actually where we did our little spooky lao thing, or our little presentation. And it was actually a pretty nice turnout. You know, there's a lot of people there. Of course, there was me, Wayne, Courtney, my wife, Kiara, and of course, Catalina, my baby. And we were all inside the viewing room and giving our thing, and they were off to the side. Meanwhile, everybody else is sitting on the chairs. And when we were finished, you know, it was fine. Everything was all done. People cleared out, except for this one homeless guy who was like snoring through basically 75% of our talk, and it was kind of funny. But so they finally got him to leave, and when he finally left, we walked outside and we went to go and you know, tell the head librarian or whoever was in charge. We told her, you know, thank you for having us for the talk story. And my question to her was, because I don't know, it felt like the place had stuff in it. Like I felt like there's stuff in there. And so I kind of looked at her and I says, "Oh, is this, you know, does this library have you ever had anything paranormal happen to you?" Excuse me. And she goes, "Oh my gosh, no." And yeah, I don't know. Like she said something along the lines of, "I don't know if I want anything to happen to me like here." And so I just kind of laughed. And at that moment, I hear on the door from that viewing room, I hear the door handle shaking. And so I turned and looked at the door, and the door slowly starts to swing open, like somebody was coming out. And so I'm just staring at the door. Then more of our group starts looking towards the door, and so I walk over. I'm thinking, oh, maybe my daughter is, you know, because she was only a little baby at the time, like small toddler, and I'm thinking, oh, maybe she's trying to come out and find me. So I walk over to the door and I stick my head out. Stick my head in without touching anything. I just kind of lean my head into the door, and I said, "Are you guys trying to come out? Like, was somebody trying to? Was it you know, any of you guys playing with the door?" And when I looked at them, their eyes were just like, my wife's eyes, Courtney's eyes, were just like rounded, and they were just staring at me, sticking my head and asking them if it was one of them opening the door, and they're like shaking their head. It wasn't us. And I said, oh, because it wasn't us. I mean, we heard the noises and we looked towards the door, and the doors just started swinging open. So the darn thing just kind of like, you know. And so the lady actually, was given her first paranormal story about her library. So pretty cool. So I learned a lot from doing the talks with Spooky Lao. Yeah, and it was a good opportunity to do public speaking, because the only kind of public speaking that I did before joining SKI was like playing music. You know, playing at the Aloha Tower for the Japanese tourists. I worked with the Japan Travel Bureau and GTB, and we used to play music for the visitors that would come down from Japan, and we would play music. Well, we had musicians, me being one of them, and dancers, and my wife actually became one of the dancers after one of the gals had left. So it was kind of nice. Like, we would spend time singing and dancing, but that was pretty much the extent of public speaking as it were. It wasn't until I joined the Spooky Kine Investigations that we actually got into talking, like doing full on like talks, like, you know, in public. But yeah, so something that I was able to learn from as well. Yeah, there were a couple of other things I wanted to share, but I'm realizing that we are currently winding down to the 50-minute mark, and I don't want to make these Mo'olelo Mondays too long, because you know, you guys have other things that you want to do, and having to stop and resume later because the video is too long. I don't know. I kind of find that a little bit difficult, especially for my focus. Sometimes I have to watch it from the beginning again, or I have to kind of rewind a bit back and just kind of understand where I left off. So, shoot. I mean, I do want to get into the investigations. There are a couple investigations that I have written here that I wanted to share, but I also don't want this video to run very long. I mean, I guess if I kind of condense it. So, okay, all right, you know what, I'll do it. I'm trying to see if we can just keep it within the 10 minutes, under an hour. So, we started doing investigations too, and investigations for me were very validating. I don't know why I needed it in my life, and I don't think I do need that anymore. I've come to a point in my life where I have grown for having the need to be validated, like, unnecessary. But back when I started off with the group, there was still that whole idea of, well, maybe that's something, maybe something upstairs is kind of loose, but having the opportunity to hear something or see something during an investigation and having it validated afterwards by replaying the what's that called, the devices that we bring to record, it was world changing for me. It was such a positive thing to have, but I guess just for my own sake, I needed that small validation, just so I know that I personally am not making things up in my head. I don't have schizophrenia or something like that. But even schizophrenia, man, sometimes I wonder, maybe they are actually in tune with hearing things that we unfortunately do not hear. So yeah, anyway, so I do remember going down to this one house on the base. We had a few investigations on the base because a lot of the people that were foreign that come down to Hawaii, they have different style, different traditions, different way of being, and so I guess those kinds of things would activate paranormal activity in their homes because it's so wildly different. But anyway, for this house, there happened to be children involved, so Wayne was very interested in checking on it really quick. So we had taken a trip out there one day to do a small tour of the house, and I took my camcorder and I was recording our tour. Of course I asked if it was okay to record it. She's like, yeah, it's fine. And she had two children, a boy and a girl, and of course her husband, military. And she was taking us around the house, and I guess after the kids, the intrigue had worn off, the kids got bored and they all decided to run away and go play with the neighborhood children in the back. But anyway, long story short, we were passing through the hallway, and the lady of the house started talking about how these things mostly happen inside the children's bedroom. And so they were complaining about like something living in their closet or under their bed. And so she wanted her son to tell us exactly what was going on. But I'm like looking at her and says, I believe, ma'am, I believe your son ran outside to go play with the neighborhood kids in the park outside. And so she's like, oh okay. And we continued on, did our tour, and then that was it. So when I had gotten home, and Wayne and I were kind of talking about this and saying, well, what do you think about this? Do you think it's like a real deal? Do you think it's whatever? I look back at the video, and as I'm walking through the hallway watching this video, you can hear me say, oh, and she goes, oh, hey, I'm going to call the kid Zed, right? So she says, hey, Zed, why don't you go ahead and tell the guys about that thing that happened to you. And then so I says, oh, I'm sorry, ma'am, I think your boy went outside to go play with the neighborhood kids. And this voice was picked up on the recorder, on my camcorder, saying, I see Z. So it said, I see Z. 3 letters, I, C, and then Z. So I was like, okay, Z. Okay, the kid's name was Zed. So I was like, perfect. And I'm thinking to myself, wow, so there's some kind of intelligent haunting going on here. Like there's something there that's able to communicate intelligently with what's going on. And so I told Wayne about the finding, and he's like, well, okay, so I think we should do an investigation. So we did. And so when we get there with our whole crew, we had a couple of newer people that came down with the group. And one of them just so happened to be our filmographer, the guy that ran the cameras, which was Steven. And they were talking in the kitchen about some story, and I'm standing in the living room, and the lady of the house keeps talking about bananas. Like, what's that smell of bananas? What's that smell of bananas? And so, what's that called? We had noticed that there were bananas sitting on the kitchen table when we had come in to the house. But she was like, why do I smell bananas all of a sudden? And then so when she was walking around, she finally realizes that, oh, that's right, I picked up bananas from the store earlier today. So that's why I smell bananas. And then so we kind of had like a small giggle at that. But something catches my eye. Going down the hall, that I actually catch the voice of that child saying ICZ. Something catches my eye. There's a shadow hanging from the ceiling of her roof, and it's kind of like doing monkey bars, right? It's swinging like that on the ceiling, and it says, whoa. And it ducks right into the kids' room, the children's room. And it's just it's dark in the house already because it's nighttime. And this darn thing just kind of swings on the roof and then zoop right into the children's room. And so I tell Wayne, I'm like, hey, bro, I think we should start this investigation soon because, there's already stuff happening. And so he's like, oh, why? What did you see? And I says, well, there was this shadow like swinging from the ceiling, and it ducked into the kids' room. And he tells me, oh, you should go check with Courtney because she's sitting inside the kids' room right now. And so I'm like, oh, okay. So I walk into the children's bedroom, and when I do, I see Courtney sitting on the ground, and she's looking up at the ceiling, and she's like got these big eyes. And I look at her and says, hey, are you okay? And she's like, oh, yeah, just that the wind started blowing, and it was causing the Venetian blinds to, kind of rattle, and it kind of scared me. And so I looked at her and I says, the wind was blowing? She goes, yeah. I said, no, these houses are actually sealed. The windows you cannot open any of the windows. They're all stuck shut. This house is air conditioned. And so she's like, what? And so it was kind of funny. So Wayne comes popping into the bedroom, and he goes, is everything all right? And so it's like, oh, she said that the blinds were rattling because of the wind. And so he's kind of like, well, there's no air. There should be all air conditioned in here. And so what ended up happening was we listened back to the recorder that was sitting on top of the shelf next to where Courtney was sitting. And we played back the audio, and you can actually hear me walking in and saying, hey, are you okay? And then right in that dead space before she answers me, that kid's voice that was on the recording with my camcorder when we came the first time comes back and says, she's fine. Right in that dead space. So I says, hey, are you okay? Kid's voice, she's fine. And then Courtney starts answering me about the rattling of the Venetian blinds and whatnot. So, did you need something? Yeah.
Oh, sorry.
No, it's okay. Hurry up and grab your stuff and get out. Get out of my class. All right. Yeah, they come in at 2:30, so I'm not worried about them. Okay, yes, because I'm recording. Bye-bye, girls. Very interesting. I mean, and the investigations all pretty much played out like that, except for one particular investigation that it didn't make me feel too happy inside. I'm not going to share about it exactly the story about that, but basically, we went down there expecting to have, looked upon a family for paranormal investigation, and it ended up being something different. So, and I guess you guys can kind of put that together with me not wanting to talk about it. But basically, sometimes people do experience traumas, and it doesn't always result in paranormal activity. Sometimes it just results in them having feelings inside that that they need to express themselves, so they get recognized for whatever reason. So recognition is kind of rough for them. But anyway, I am going to end our talk story there. I know I did want to share more stories with you folks, and we'll get to those, but for what it's worth, being a part of Spooky Kine Investigations has been nothing but a very positive has been nothing or had nothing but a positive impact on my life. No matter what we did, it was always something that improved who I am. You know, it makes me feel like it made me a better person, being a part of that group. And so, yeah, tours, talks, and investigations. Those are my bullet points that I wanted to hit today. There wasn't a story I wanted to share, but I guess I'll have to share it next time, which is actually pretty fitting because it kind of talks about the end of Spooky Kine. Yeah, our part 3 is going to be, and technically, I am still a part of Spooky Kine. I mean, like, I'm not really taking, like, nobody's really contacted me to do anything as of late. Like, there's only been a couple of people. I'll get into it. I'll get into it more later. We've already passed the 1 hour, and I have to trim this thing back a little bit to get those clowns. Maybe I'll leave them in here. Yeah, that kind of covers the midsection and what we kind of did as Spooky Kine Investigations and how it impacted me being a part of this group. Yeah. But next time, we will talk about how things ended with Spooky Kine Investigations, well, as a group. And, yeah, it'll be more history. And then, of course, I'll try and throw some other stories, especially this other story I want to share with you guys today. It'll be more fitting for the next class. I mean, the next talk story, Mo'olelo Monday anyway. So, appreciate you guys stopping by. I just wanted to say that I love you folks very much. Aloha. Ahui ho. We'll see you next week on Mo'olelo Monday. Ahui ho.